Linda and I sat in silence for a moment, both processing what we'd just heard. "Margaret," Linda said quietly, "I don't think you should go to his house." "Why? I thought you said he'd never hurt me." The way he sounded just now. I've never heard him sound like that before. Like what? Like someone I don't know. I pulled out my phone and called Detective Morrison. "Jake, it's Margaret Thompson. I think I need that backup we talked about." 20 minutes later, Detective Morrison and two other officers met us at the cafe. After listening to the recording of my conversation with David, they agreed that something wasn't right. "Mrs. Thompson, I don't want you going to his house alone, but if you're willing, we'd like to set up a controlled meeting. We'll have officers positioned around the property, and you'll be wearing a wire." What if he really is planning to hurt me? That's why we'll be there. The moment we sense any danger, we'll move in. An hour later, I was driving to David's house with a wire taped to my chest and police officers positioned around the neighborhood. Linda had wanted to come with me, but Detective Morrison thought it was safer if I went alone. David was waiting for me on his front porch when I arrived. He looked older than I remembered, and there was something in his eyes that I'd never seen before. Something cold and calculating. "Margaret, thank you for coming. Let's just get this over with, David." We went inside and sat in his living room, the same room where we'd spent so many evenings planning our future together. Now it felt like a stranger's house. "Margaret, I want you to know that everything I told you about loving you was true. Just not true enough to stop you from sleeping with my best friend. That was a mistake, a terrible mistake, but it doesn't change how I feel about you." "What about the life insurance policy, David?" His expression hardened. "What about it?" "Why? Did you take out a policy for $500,000 and list Linda as the beneficiary? Because I love her." "You love her, but you are going to marry me?" "Margaret, you're a wonderful woman, but Linda and I have something special, something I've never felt before. So why not just break up with me? Why go through with the wedding?" David was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because you have something Linda and I need." "What? Your house, your savings, your retirement account?" "Linda's been struggling financially since her divorce, and I made some bad investments. We need money, Margaret, and married couples don't have to testify against each other." The pieces suddenly fell into place. "You were planning to kill me." It would have looked like an accident. A fall down the stairs, maybe, or a car accident. These things happen to people our age. I felt like I was going to be sick. "And then, you and Linda would inherit everything and live happily ever after." Something like that. But Linda didn't know, did she? She really thought this was just about love. Linda's a romantic. She believes in fairy tales. I didn't want to burden her with the practical details. The practical details of murdering your wife. David shrugged. "Life insurance policies pay. Double for accidental death." I couldn't believe how casually he was discussing my murder. This man I'd loved, this man I'd trusted with my heart, had been planning to kill me for money. What happens now, David? Now that I know the truth? Now we have a problem, because I can't let you leave here knowing what you know. David stood up and walked to a drawer in his desk. When he turned around, he was holding a gun. "I'm sorry. Margaret, I really did care about you, but you should have minded your own business." "David, please, we can work this out. I won't tell anyone." "I'm afraid it's too late for that." Just as David raised the gun, the front door burst open and police officers flooded into the room. "Drop your weapon! Police!" David spun around, startled, and in the confusion, I dove behind the couch. I heard shouting, a gunshot, and then silence. When I finally looked up, David was on the ground, handcuffed, and Detective Morrison was helping me to my feet. "Are you okay, Mrs. Thompson?" "I think..." "So he's alive. He'll be going to prison for a very long time." As they led David away, he looked at me one last time. "You could have been rich, Margaret. We could have been rich together." "I'd rather be poor and alive," I replied. Later that evening, I sat in my kitchen with Emma and Detective Morrison, trying to process everything that had happened. Linda had been arrested as an accessory, though she claimed she'd had no knowledge of David's plan to kill me. The investigation would determine how much she really knew. "Mom, I can't believe you went through with that," Emma said, holding my hand tightly. I had to know the truth. I had to hear him admit what he was planning. "You're the bravest woman I know," Detective Morrison said. "Most people would have just disappeared and hoped for the best. I'm not most people, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it." The next morning, I called the wedding venue and canceled everything. The deposits were lost, but my life was saved. I also called all our friends and family to explain what had happened. Most were shocked and supportive, though a few seemed to think I should have just quietly called off the wedding without involving the police. A week later, I returned my beautiful champagne wedding dress to the boutique. Victoria, the sales associate, was horrified when I told her what had happened. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm so sorry. We'll refund your money immediately." "Thank you. And Victoria, if you ever have a customer whose fiancé is acting suspiciously, tell her to trust her instincts." "I will. I definitely will." As I walked out of the boutique, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't expected. The dress was gone, the wedding was canceled, and the man I'd thought I loved was in jail. But I was alive, and I was free. 6 months later, I received a letter from Linda in prison. She'd been sentenced to 5 years as an accessory to attempted murder. In her letter, she apologized for everything and claimed she'd had no idea about David's plan. She said she'd been naive and selfish, and that she hoped someday I could forgive her. I never wrote back. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive, and some friendships are too broken to repair. David was sentenced to 25 years for attempted murder and conspiracy. He'll be 87 years old when he gets out, if he lives that long. As for me, I'm doing well. I've made new friends, taken up painting, and even started dating again. This time, I'm trusting my instincts from the very beginning, and I've learned something important. Sometimes the people who help you pick your dress are the same people who would destroy your life. But if you're strong enough to face the truth, you can survive anything. Thank you for following Margaret's incredible journey with us. If this story has touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories of courage and survival, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to trust your instincts about someone you loved? We'd love to hear your story. Remember, you are stronger than you know, and you deserve people in your life who truly love and respect you. Until next time, take care of yourselves and trust your hearts. The night before my planned confrontation with Linda, I barely slept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing what I would say and trying to prepare myself for whatever truth I was about to uncover. The recording device that Detective Morrison had given me felt heavy in my pocket, a constant reminder of how surreal my life had become. I had arranged to meet Linda for lunch at the garden spot, our usual place. It seemed fitting that our 30-year friendship would end where we'd shared so many conversations over the years. I arrived early and chose a table in the back corner, away from other diners, but still public enough to feel safe. Linda walked in at exactly noon, looking nervous and fidgety. She'd lost weight over the past few weeks, and there were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Margaret," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "You sounded urgent on the phone. Is everything okay?" I studied her face, this woman who had been my closest friend for 3 decades. "That's what I want to ask you, Linda. Is everything okay?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've been acting strange. For weeks, canceling plans, lying about your activities, avoiding my calls. I'm worried about you." Linda's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. "I've just been busy. You know how it is." "Busy with what, exactly?" "You're retired, remember?" "Volunteer work. I told you about the hospital." I leaned forward, my voice gentle but firm. "Linda, I called the hospital yesterday. They have no record of you volunteering there." The color drained from Linda's face. Maybe they made a mistake. Or maybe you made a mistake." In thinking, I wouldn't find out the truth. Linda's eyes darted around the cafe, looking everywhere except at me. Margaret, I don't know what you think you found out, but I know about you and David. The words hung in the air between us, like a death sentence. Linda's face went from pale to gray, and for a moment, I thought she might faint. I don't know what you're talking about. I saw you together, Linda. At his house. I saw him kiss you goodbye. Linda's composure finally cracked. Tears started streaming down her face, and her whole body began to shake. Margaret, I can explain. Then explain. Explain how my best friend and my fiancé have been having an affair behind my back. Explain how you could help me pick out my wedding dress while you were sleeping with the man I was supposed to marry. It wasn't supposed to happen, Linda sobbed. We never meant for it to go this far. How far, Linda? How long has this been going on? Linda buried her face in her hands. 6 months. It started 6 months ago. 6 months. That meant their affair had begun just 2 months after David proposed to me. While I was planning our wedding, they were planning their betrayal. How? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. It was innocent at first. David came to me for advice about your birthday present. He wanted to get you something special, and he knew I'd know what you'd like. We met for coffee to discuss it, and we just connected. Connected? We talked for hours that day. About you, about life, about everything. He was so easy to talk to, so understanding. And I was lonely, Margaret. Tom and I had been divorced for 2 years, and I was so lonely. So you decided to steal my fiancé? It wasn't like that. We tried to fight it. We both knew it was wrong. But the feelings were so strong and we couldn't stay away from each other. I felt sick listening to her justifications. Did you ever think about me? Did you ever consider what this would do to me? Every day. It was eating me alive, Margaret. I wanted to tell you so many times, but I didn't know how. You could have started with not sleeping with him. Linda flinched as if I'd slapped her. You're right, there's no excuse for what we did. But Margaret, you have to understand. We love each other. Love? I laughed bitterly. You call this love? Betraying your best friend? Lying and sneaking around? That's not love, Linda. That's selfishness. What we have is real, Margaret. I know you don't want to hear that, but it is. Real enough to plan a cruise together for right after my wedding? Linda's eyes widened in shock. How did you... I found the booking confirmation in your house. November 20th. 5 days after I was supposed to marry David. Were you planning to tell me before or after I said I do? We were going to tell you after the wedding. We thought it would be easier if... Easier? You thought it would be easier to let me marry a man who was in love with someone else? David was going to call off the wedding. We just needed more time to figure out how to do it without hurting you. Without hurting me? I stood up, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Linda, you've destroyed me. You've taken everything. I believed in and shattered it. My trust, my friendship, my future, all gone because you were lonely. Other diners were starting to stare, but I didn't care. I'd kept this secret for days, and I couldn't contain it anymore. Margaret, please sit down. Let's talk about this rationally. Rationally? There's nothing rational about what you've done. But I sat back down, remembering the recording device and the need to get more information. Linda, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Okay. Is David planning to hurt me? Linda looked genuinely confused. Hurt. You, what do you mean? I found a life insurance policy at his house, $500,000 with you as the beneficiary. It was taken out 3 months ago. I don't know anything about a life insurance policy. You're listed as the beneficiary, Linda. You had to know? I swear to you I had no idea. David never mentioned any life insurance policy. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. She seemed genuinely shocked by this revelation. What about the large cash withdrawals from his bank account? I don't know about those either. Margaret, what are you thinking? I'm thinking that maybe this affair is about more than just love. Maybe it's about money. Linda shook her head vigorously. No, That's not what this is about. David loves me and I love him. It has nothing to do with money. Then explain the life insurance policy. I can't. I've never heard of it before today. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photo I'd taken of the policy. Linda stared at it in shock. This doesn't make sense, she said. Why would David take out a policy and list me as the beneficiary without telling me? Maybe because he's planning something you don't know about. Like what? Like killing me and collecting the insurance money? Linda gasped. Margaret, that's insane. David would never hurt you. He's not that kind of person. How well do you really know him, Linda? You've been having an affair with him for 6 months. I was planning to marry him, but neither of us really knows who he is, do we? Linda was quiet for a long moment, processing what I'd told her. Margaret, I think you need to talk to David about this. Oh, I plan to. But first I want you to do something for me. What? I want you to call David right now and tell him you've told me everything. I want to see how he reacts. Margaret, I don't think... Do it, Linda. If you really love him, if you really think he's innocent, then call. Him. With shaking hands, Linda pulled out her phone and dialed David's number. I activated my recording app and leaned closer so I could hear both sides of the conversation. David, it's me. I need to tell you something. Margaret knows about us. Could hear David's sharp intake of breath through the phone. What do you mean she knows? She knows everything. About the affair, about the cruise, everything. There was a long pause. How? She saw us together at your house. She's been investigating us. Investigating us? What else does she know? David, she found a life insurance policy at your house, with me listed as the beneficiary. Did you take out a life insurance policy? Another long pause. Linda, where are you right now? I'm at the garden spot with Margaret. Is she listening to this conversation? Linda looked at me, and I nodded. Yes, she's here. Put her on the phone. Linda handed me the phone with a trembling hand. Hello, David. Margaret, sweetheart, I can explain everything. I'm listening. The affair with Linda, it just happened. We never meant to hurt you. We were going to tell you after the wedding. After the wedding? You were going to let me marry you knowing you were in love with someone else? We thought it would be easier to explain everything once the wedding was over. We didn't want to embarrass you in front of all our friends and family. How considerate of you. What about the life insurance policy? There was a long silence. What? Life insurance policy? The one I found in your desk drawer. $500,000, with Linda as the beneficiary. Margaret, I don't know what you're talking about. David, I have a photograph of it. Your signature is on the application. Another silence, longer this time. When David spoke again, his voice was different, colder. Margaret, I think we need to talk in person. Can you come to my house? I don't think that's a good idea. Please, I can explain everything. There are things you don't understand. Then explain them now. Not over the phone. Margaret, if you ever loved me, if you ever trusted me, please come to my house so we can talk face to face. I looked at Linda, who was staring at me with wide, frightened eyes. Something in David's voice had changed, and we both heard it. I'll think about it, I said. Don't think too long, Margaret. We need to resolve this before it goes any further. There was something threatening in his tone that made my blood run cold. I'll call you back, I said, and hung up. I could hear the nervousness in his voice, and I knew I was on the right track. I'll look into it next week, I said. After the wedding. Perfect. I love how thoughtful you are, Margaret. After we hung up, I listened to the recording. David's nervousness when I mentioned life insurance was clear, and his lies about Linda were documented. It wasn't enough to prove they were planning to kill me, but it was a start. Tomorrow night, I would confront Linda, and this time, I would be ready for whatever she had to say. The wedding was still a week away, but I was no longer the naive bride-to-be who had picked out her dress with her best friend's help. I was a woman on a mission, and I wasn't going to stop until I had the truth. What will happen when Margaret confronts Linda? And what is the real plan behind this betrayal? Don't miss the shocking conclusion in Chapter 5. Like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to see how this incredible story ends. I woke up the next morning with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. The shock and numbness of the previous night had given way to something much more powerful: determination. I wasn't going to be a victim this time. I wasn't going to quietly disappear and let David and Linda continue their affair without consequences. But first, I needed to know everything. How long had this been going on? Who else knew? And most importantly, what exactly were they planning to do about our wedding? I called in sick to work again and spent the morning developing what I could only call an investigation plan. If David and Linda thought they could deceive me, they were about to learn that they'd underestimated Margaret Thompson. My first stop was Linda's house. I knew she usually went to her yoga class on Thursday mornings, which gave me about an hour to look around. I still had the spare key she'd given me years ago for emergencies, and I figured this qualified as an emergency of sorts. I felt like a criminal as I let myself into Linda's house, but my guilt was overshadowed by my need for answers. The house was exactly as I remembered it, neat and tastefully decorated, filled with photos of our 30-year friendship. Looking at those pictures now made my stomach turn. I started in her living room, looking for anything that might give me clues about her relationship with David. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. On her coffee table, partially hidden under a magazine, was a greeting card. My hands shook as I opened it. The front showed 2 intertwined hearts, and inside, in David's handwriting, were the words, "My darling Linda, I can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore. Soon we'll be free to be together openly. All my love, D." The card was dated just 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, when I was excitedly planning our wedding, David was writing love notes to my best friend. I photographed the card with my phone and continued searching. In Linda's bedroom, I found more evidence: a man's watch on her nightstand that I recognized as David's, and in her closet, a shirt that definitely belonged to him. But the most damning evidence was in her desk drawer. I found a folder labeled travel plans that contained printouts for a cruise to the Caribbean. The booking was for 2 people, departing November 20th, just 5 days after what was supposed to be my wedding date. The names on the reservation were David Richardson and Linda Morrison. They were planning to go on a honeymoon cruise together while I was supposed to be on my honeymoon with David. I photographed everything and left Linda's house feeling sick, but vindicated. Now I knew for certain that this wasn't just a casual affair. They were planning a future together, and they were using my wedding as some kind of cover. My next stop was David's house. I'd never had a key, but I knew he kept a spare under a fake rock by his back door. He'd shown it to me months ago, joking that it wasn't very secure, but it was convenient. David's house told a similar story. In his bedroom, I found jewelry that I'd seen Linda wearing, and in his bathroom, women's toiletries that were definitely not mine. But the most shocking discovery was in his home office. On his desk was a legal document that made my blood run cold. It was a life insurance policy, taken out just 3 months ago, naming Linda as the beneficiary. The policy was for $500,000. I stared at the document, trying to process what I was seeing. David had taken out a massive life insurance policy and named Linda as the beneficiary, not me, his supposed future wife. What kind of game were they playing? I photographed the policy and continued searching. In his filing cabinet, I found more disturbing evidence: bank statements showing large cash withdrawals over the past 2 months, and a receipt for jewelry purchased at an expensive store downtown. The receipt was dated last week, and the item was described as diamond tennis bracelet. I'd never received a diamond tennis bracelet from David. As I was preparing to leave, I heard a car in the driveway. Panic shot through me as I realized David was coming home early. I quickly gathered my things and slipped out the back door, my heart pounding as I made it to my car just as David's garage door was opening. I drove to a nearby park and sat in my car, trying to process everything I'd discovered. The affair was bad enough, but this felt like something much more sinister. The life insurance policy, the cash withdrawals, the cruise booked for right after our wedding date. It all painted a picture that terrified me. Were they planning to kill me? The thought seemed ridiculous, like something out of a movie, but I couldn't shake it. Why else would David take out a life insurance policy naming Linda as the beneficiary just months before our wedding? Why the large cash withdrawals? Why book a cruise for immediately after our wedding? I needed help, but I couldn't go to the police with what I had. Suspicious behavior wasn't a crime, and I had no proof that they were planning to hurt me. But I couldn't ignore my instincts, especially not after everything I'd discovered. I decided to call my daughter Emma. If anyone would believe me and help me figure out what to do, it was her. Mom, you sound upset. What's wrong? Emma, I need to see you right away. Can you meet me somewhere private? Of course, are you okay? I will be. Can you meet me at Riverside Park in an hour? I'll be there. An hour later, I was sitting on a bench by the river, watching Emma walk toward me with concern written all over her face. I'd spent the drive trying to figure out how to explain everything without sounding like a paranoid lunatic. Mom, you look terrible. What's happened? I took a deep breath and told her everything. The strange behavior, the investigation, the evidence I'd found, and my growing fear that David and Linda might be planning something more than just an affair. Emma listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious with each revelation. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Mom, this is really serious. You need to go to the police. And tell them what? That my fiancé is cheating on me with my best friend? That's not a crime. But the life insurance policy, the cash, withdrawals, the timing of everything, it's suspicious. Suspicious isn't illegal. Emma pulled out her phone. I'm calling my friend Jake. He's a detective with the state police. Maybe he can give us some advice. Emma, I don't want to involve. Mom, if there's even a chance that they're planning to hurt you, we need to take this seriously. An hour. Later, we were sitting in a coffee shop with Detective Jake Morrison, a serious young man who listened carefully as I repeated my story. Mrs. Thompson, I understand your concerns, and I think you're right to be worried. What you've described could be innocent, but the pattern is troubling. So what should I do? First, don't let them know that you know. Continue acting normal until we can figure out what they're really planning. Second, I want you to document everything. Every conversation, every interaction, every time they're together. And third, I want you to consider wearing a wire. A wire? A recording device. If they are planning something, we need evidence. And the best way to get that evidence is to get them to talk about it. The idea of wearing a wire terrified me, but I knew Jake was right. If David and Linda were planning to hurt me, I needed proof. What about the wedding? I asked. That's tricky. If you cancel it now, they'll know you're suspicious. But if you go through with it, I'm not marrying a man who's planning to kill me. Of course not, but maybe we can use the wedding to our advantage. If they're planning something, it's likely to happen around the wedding date. That gives us a timeline to work with. We spent the next hour developing a plan. I would continue acting normal, but I would be recording every conversation I had with David and Linda. Jake would monitor the situation and be ready to intervene if necessary. And Emma would be my backup, checking in with me regularly and ready to call for help if I didn't respond. It was terrifying, but it was also empowering. For the first time since I'd discovered the affair, I felt like I had some control over the situation. That evening, when David called to ask about dinner plans, I was ready. Actually, I was thinking we should have dinner with Linda tomorrow night, I said, activating the recording app on my phone. I feel like we haven't seen much of her lately. There was a pause. Tomorrow night? I think Linda might be busy. How do you know what Linda's doing tomorrow night? Another pause, longer this time. I don't. I just meant that she's been busy lately with her volunteer work. What volunteer work? At the hospital, remember? She mentioned it the other day. I knew he was lying. Linda didn't volunteer at the hospital, but I played along. Of course. Well, maybe we can all get together after the wedding then. That sounds perfect, sweetheart. I can't wait for us to be married. The ease with which he lied to me was still shocking, but now I was recording every word. Soon, I would have enough evidence to expose them both. David, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you ever think about our future? About growing old together? Every day. Margaret, you've made me the happiest man alive. I can't imagine my life without you. Even if something happened to me, you'd be okay financially, right? I mean, you have your pension and your savings. Why would you ask something like that? I just want to make sure you're taken care of. Maybe we should look into life insurance policies for both of us. There was a long silence. That's actually a good idea. Very practical of you. Have you ever thought about it before? Not really, but you're right. We should protect each other. Most importantly, I needed to figure out how to protect myself. The wedding was in 10 days. Invitations had been sent, deposits had been paid, and everyone we knew was expecting to celebrate our marriage. But there wasn't going to be a wedding. There couldn't be. I wouldn't marry a man who was cheating on me with my best friend, no matter how much it would cost me financially or emotionally. The question was, how was I going to handle this? Should I confront them privately? Should I cancel the wedding? Quietly and let people draw their own conclusions? Or should I expose them publicly for what they'd done? As I finally went to bed that night, my beautiful champagne wedding dress hanging in my closet like a ghost of my shattered dreams, I realized that I was angrier than I'd ever been in my life. David and Linda had stolen more than just my fiancé and my best friend. They'd stolen my trust, my joy, and my faith in love itself, but they'd also awakened something in me that I didn't know existed, a fierce determination to make sure they faced consequences for what they'd done. The wedding might be off, but this story was far from over. How will Margaret confront the ultimate betrayal? And what will she discover about how long this affair has been going on? Don't miss Chapter 4 to see Margaret's plan for justice. Like, comment, and subscribe to follow this incredible journey of betrayal and revenge. The morning after I discovered David's mysterious dinner photo, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible just weeks earlier. I was going to investigate the man I was planning to marry. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. As a librarian at the county library, I had always prided myself on perfect attendance. But today, I needed answers more than I needed to maintain my record. My first stop was the real estate office where Jennifer Walsh worked. I had looked up the address online and driven by twice before finally working up the courage to go inside. "Good morning," I said to the receptionist, a young man with perfectly styled hair and an overly bright smile. "I'm looking for Jennifer Walsh. I'm sorry, but Jennifer is out showing properties today. Can I help you with something, or would you like to leave a message?" "Actually, I was hoping to speak with her about a mutual friend, David Richardson. I believe they had dinner together earlier this week." The receptionist's expression shifted slightly. "Oh, you must be Margaret. Jennifer mentioned you. Congratulations on your upcoming wedding." My blood ran cold. Jennifer had mentioned me? How did she even know who I was? "Thank you," I managed to say. "How do you know Jennifer knows me?" "She's been helping David with something special for your wedding." Very hush-hush, but she seemed excited about it. Another wedding surprise. Another. Secret being kept from me. I was beginning to hate surprises. "Do you know what kind of help she's been providing?" "I'm sorry, but I really can't say. Client confidentiality, you understand. But I'm sure David will tell you all about it soon." I left the real estate office feeling more confused than ever. If Jennifer was helping David with wedding plans, why did their dinner look so intimate? And why hadn't David mentioned working? With a real estate agent? My next stop was the restaurant where the photo had been taken. It was a small Italian place called Amore that I'd never been to before. The lunch crowd was just starting to arrive, and I managed to get a table near the spot where David had been sitting in the photo. "Excuse me," I said to our waitress, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. "I'm wondering if you might remember a couple who was here Tuesday night around 8:30. A man in his early 60s with gray hair and a woman." I realized I didn't know what the woman looked like. "Honey, we get a lot of couples in here," the waitress said gently. "Is there something specific you need to know?" I felt foolish, but I pressed on. "The man is my fiancé, and I think he might have been here planning something for our wedding. I was hoping to find out what kind of surprise he's planning. The waitress's expression changed, and she glanced around nervously. You know what? Let me get the manager. She might be able to help you better. A few minutes later, a woman in her 40s approached my table. She had the look of someone who had seen everything and wasn't easily surprised. I'm Maria, the manager. Cindy said you were asking about your fiancé? Yes, David Richardson. I think he was here Tuesday night with someone, planning something for our wedding. Maria sat down across from me, her expression serious. Honey, I don't know how to tell you this, but the couple you're talking about, they didn't look like they were planning a wedding. They looked like they were, well, like they were together, if you know what I mean. My heart started pounding. Together how? They were holding hands across the table. Very intimate, very romantic. I remember thinking what a sweet couple they made. The room started spinning. Are you sure it was the same man? Gray hair, early 60s, about 6 feet tall? I'm sure. And the woman was blonde, maybe in her 50s, very elegant. They seemed very comfortable with each other, like they'd been together for a while. Linda. The description fit Linda perfectly. I thanked Maria and left the restaurant on shaking legs. My mind was reeling, trying to process what I'd just learned. David and Linda having an intimate dinner together. David and Linda holding hands like lovers, but it couldn't be true. Linda was my best friend. She would never betray me like that. And David loved me. He'd proposed to me for God's sake. We were getting married in 10 days. I drove home in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. Once inside my house, I poured myself a glass of wine, even though it was only 2 in the afternoon. I needed something to calm my nerves while I tried to think rationally. There had to be an explanation. Maybe Linda was helping David plan something for the wedding. Maybe they were discussing seating arrangements or menu options. Maybe the waitress had misinterpreted their body language, but even as I tried to convince myself of these innocent explanations, I knew in my heart that something was terribly wrong. I spent the rest of the afternoon going through my phone, looking at text messages and call logs, searching for clues I might have missed. That's when I noticed something strange. Over the past month, Linda had been texting me less frequently, and when she did text, her messages were shorter and more formal than usual. But what really caught my attention was the timing. Several times when David had told me he was working late, Linda had also been unavailable when I'd tried to call her. I pulled out a calendar and started marking the dates. Tuesday night, when David had dinner with the mystery woman, Linda had canceled our coffee date, claiming she wasn't feeling well. The previous Thursday, when David said he had a late meeting, Linda had declined my invitation to see a movie, saying she had other plans. The pattern was becoming clear, and it was making me sick to my stomach. I needed more evidence before I could confront either of them. I needed to be absolutely certain before I accused my fiancé and my best friend of betraying me. That evening, when David called to say he'd be working late again, I made a decision that went against every instinct I'd ever had about privacy and trust. That's fine, sweetheart, I said, keeping my voice light. I'll probably go to bed early anyway. After we hung up, I got in my car and drove to David's house. His car wasn't in the driveway, which confirmed that he wasn't home, but I needed to know where he really was. I felt like a stalker as I parked down the street from his house and waited. This wasn't the kind of person I'd ever thought I'd become, but desperate times called for desperate measures. At 8:15, David's car pulled into his driveway. But he wasn't alone. A blonde woman got out of the passenger side, and even from a distance, I could see it was Linda. They stood talking by his car for several minutes, and then Linda got into her own car, which had been parked on the street. I watched as David walked her to her car, leaned down to the driver's window, and appeared to kiss her goodbye. I sat in my car, frozen with shock and disbelief. My fiancé and my best friend, the two people I trusted most in the world. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating that I couldn't even cry. I just sat there, numb with the realization that my entire world had been built on lies. Linda drove past me without noticing my car, and I saw her clearly in the streetlight. She looked happy, relaxed, nothing like the tense, guilty woman I'd had lunch with earlier. I drove home mechanically, my mind struggling to process what I'd witnessed. When I got inside, I poured another glass of wine and sat at my kitchen table, staring at the wall. How long had this been going on? Had they been together before David and I started dating? Had our entire relationship been a lie? Had Linda been pretending to be happy for me while secretly stealing my fiancé? The questions swirled in my mind, each one more painful than the last. I thought about all the times Linda had encouraged my relationship with David, all the wedding planning we'd done together, all the conversations about how happy she was for me, and I thought about David, the man I'd fallen in love with, the man I'd trusted with my heart. Had any of it been real? Had he ever actually loved me, or had I just been a convenient cover for his relationship with Linda? My phone rang, and David's name appeared on the screen. For a moment, I considered not answering, but I needed to hear his voice, needed to see if I could detect the lies now that I knew the truth. "Hi, sweetheart," he said, his voice warm and loving. "I just got home from work. How was your day?" "It was fine," I managed to say. "How was your meeting?" "Long and boring, but productive. I can't wait for all this work stuff to be behind us, so we can focus on our honeymoon." The ease with which he lied to me was breathtaking. He sounded so sincere, so loving, that if I hadn't seen him with Linda just an hour earlier, I would have believed every word. "David," I said, testing him, "I was thinking we should have dinner with Linda and Tom soon. Maybe this weekend?" There was a brief pause. "That sounds nice, but I think Linda mentioned she and Tom had plans this weekend. Maybe after the wedding?" Another lie. Linda had been divorced from Tom for 2 years. "Of course," I said. "After the wedding sounds perfect." We talked for a few more minutes about mundane things, and the whole time I marveled at how normal he sounded, how loving and attentive. If I hadn't seen the truth with my own eyes, I never would have suspected anything. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen until well past midnight, trying to decide what to do next. I could confront them both immediately, but I wanted to understand the full scope of their betrayal first. I needed to know how long this had been going on and whether other people knew about it. We finished lunch in relative silence, and when we parted ways in the parking lot, Linda hugged me tighter than usual. "I love you, Margaret. I hope you know that." "I love you too. And Linda? Whatever's bothering you, you can tell me. We've been through everything together." She nodded, but I could see tears in her eyes as she got into her car. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I kept replaying the conversations with David and Linda, trying to piece together what felt so wrong. Both of their explanations made sense, on the surface, but something deeper was nagging at me. At 2 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and went to my computer. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I felt compelled to do something, anything, to ease the anxiety that was eating away at me. I started by searching for wedding planners in our area, thinking maybe I could figure out which one David was working with. But after an hour of searching, I couldn't find any that seemed to match what he'd described. Then, almost without thinking, I found myself looking at David's social media profiles. We were friends on Facebook, but I rarely checked his page. He wasn't very active online, usually just posting the occasional photo or sharing articles about education. But as I scrolled through his recent activity, something caught my eye. 3 days ago, he had been tagged in a photo at a restaurant downtown. The photo showed David sitting across from someone at an intimate table for two, but the other person's face was turned away from the camera. The timestamp on the photo was 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday night. The same Tuesday night he'd told me he was working late. My hands were shaking as I clicked on the photo to see if there were any comments that might identify his dinner companion. There was only one comment, from someone named Jennifer Walsh. "Great seeing you both. Can't wait for the big day." Both? David had been with someone, and this Jennifer person knew about our wedding. I spent the next hour trying to figure out who Jennifer Walsh was, but her profile was private and we had no mutual friends. The only thing I could see was that she lived in our town and worked at a local real estate office. By the time the sun came up, I had convinced myself that I was being ridiculous. David probably had dinner with a client or a colleague. The both comment could have referred to David and the client, and the big day could have been about a business deal. But as I got ready for work that morning, I couldn't shake the image of David sitting across from someone at that intimate table, someone whose face I couldn't see, and I couldn't stop thinking about the guilt I'd seen in Linda's eyes. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones, the same way I'd felt it all, those years ago with Richard. But this time, I wasn't going to ignore my instincts. This time, I was going to find out the truth, no matter how much it hurt. What will Margaret discover when she starts digging deeper? And why is her best friend acting so guilty? Don't miss Chapter 3 to find out. Like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to follow Margaret's journey to the truth. 2 weeks before my wedding, I should have been floating on cloud 9. Instead, I found myself lying awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling of my bedroom, trying to shake off a growing sense of unease that I couldn't quite explain. It had started with small things, little inconsistencies that my rational mind tried to dismiss, but my intuition refused to ignore. David had been working late more often, claiming he needed to finish up projects before our honeymoon. Linda had been acting strangely too, more distant during our phone calls, and she'd canceled our usual coffee date twice in the past week. "You're just having pre-wedding jitters," I told myself as I got up to make a cup of chamomile tea. It's perfectly normal. But deep down, I knew this feeling was different from normal nervousness. This was the same instinct that had tried to warn me about Richard's affairs all those years ago, the same quiet voice I'd ignored until the evidence became impossible to deny. The next morning, I decided to surprise David at his office with lunch. He'd been so stressed lately, and I thought a nice meal together might help both of us relax. I stopped by his favorite deli and picked up turkey sandwiches and homemade soup, then drove to the consulting firm where he worked part-time since his retirement. "Is Mr. Richardson in?" I asked the receptionist, a young woman named Sarah who always greeted me warmly. Sarah looked confused. "Mr. Richardson? He's not in today, Mrs. Thompson. Actually, he hasn't been in all week." I thought he was taking time off for wedding preparations. My heart skipped a beat. "All week? Are you sure?" "Yes, ma'am. He called Monday morning and said he'd be out until after the honeymoon." I forced a smile. Of course, I must have gotten confused. "Thank you, Sarah." I walked back to my car on unsteady legs, my mind racing. If David wasn't at work, where had he been going every day? And why had he lied to me about it? I sat in the parking lot for several minutes, trying to come up with innocent explanations. Maybe he was planning a surprise for the wedding. Maybe he was dealing with a family matter he didn't want to worry me with. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation that I was too anxious to see. But the sandwich bag felt heavy in my hands, and the smell of the food was making me nauseous. I drove home and called Linda, needing to hear a familiar, comforting voice. "Hi, Margaret," she answered, but her tone seemed forced, almost strained. "Linda, are you okay? You sound odd." "I'm fine, just busy. What's up?" "I was wondering if you wanted to grab lunch. I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed with all the wedding preparations, and I could use some girl talk." There was a pause that lasted too long. "Actually, I can't today. I have a doctor's appointment." "Is everything all right? You didn't mention being sick." "It's just a routine checkup. Nothing to worry about." But Linda had never been secretive about doctor's appointments before. In fact, she usually complained about them for days in advance. "Maybe tomorrow, then," I suggested. "I'll have to check my schedule and get back to you." After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen feeling more alone than I had in months. The two people I was closest to were both acting strangely, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. That afternoon, I decided to visit my daughter Emma at the elementary school where she taught 3rd grade. If anyone could help me sort through my confused feelings, it was Emma. She had inherited my intuition, but also her father's analytical mind, making her an excellent sounding board. I arrived just as school was letting out, and Emma's face lit up when she saw me waiting by her classroom door. "Mom, what a nice surprise. What brings you here?" "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd see if you wanted to grab coffee." Emma studied my face with the perceptive eyes she'd had since childhood. "You look worried. Is everything okay?" 20 minutes later, we were settled in a quiet corner of a coffee shop near the school. and I found myself pouring out my concerns to my daughter. I feel silly even saying this, I began, but something feels off. David's been acting strange, and so has Linda. I'm probably just being paranoid. Emma listened carefully, sipping her latte and nodding occasionally. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Mom, you have the best instincts of anyone I know. Remember when I was 16 and you knew something was wrong even though I was trying to hide it? I smiled at the memory. Emma had been in an abusive relationship with a boy from school, but she'd been too embarrassed to tell me. I'd sensed something was wrong and kept gently probing until she finally opened up. That was different. You're my daughter. I know you better than anyone. And you've known David for 2 years and Linda for 30. If your gut is telling you something's wrong, maybe you should listen to it. But what if I'm just being paranoid? What if I'm sabotaging my own happiness because I'm scared? Emma reached across the table and took my hand. Mom, you deserve to feel secure and confident in your relationship. If David is hiding something, you have a right to know what it is. That evening, I decided to take Emma's advice. When David called to say he'd be working late again, I made a decision that felt both necessary and terrifying. David, can we talk when you get home? I feel like we haven't had a real conversation in days. Of course, sweetheart. I should be. Home by 9:30. But 9:30 came and went, then 10, then 10:30. When David finally walked through my front door at 11:15, he looked exhausted and distracted. I'm so sorry I'm late, he said, kissing my cheek. The project ran longer than expected. What project exactly? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. David paused in the act of loosening his tie. Just some consulting work. Nothing exciting. For which client? Another pause. It's a small company downtown. You wouldn't know them. I took a deep breath. David, I stopped by your office today to bring you lunch. Sarah said you haven't been in all week. The color drained from David's face, and for a moment, he looked like a deer caught in headlights. Then he sat down heavily on my couch and put his head in his hands. Margaret, I can explain. I'm listening. I've been meeting with a wedding planner. I wanted to surprise you with some special touches for the ceremony. I know we agreed to keep things simple, but I wanted our day to be perfect. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by guilt for doubting him. David, you don't need to surprise me. The wedding is already perfect. I know, but you deserve something special. I've been working with someone to arrange for a string, quartet, and some upgraded flowers. I wanted it to be a surprise. I moved to sit beside him on the couch. That's incredibly sweet, but you've been so stressed. I was worried about you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to worry you. I just wanted everything to be perfect for my perfect bride. He pulled me into his arms, and I let myself relax against his chest. This made sense. David was a thoughtful, generous man who would absolutely want to make our wedding special. I felt foolish for doubting him. Next time, just tell me, I said softly. I don't need surprises. I just need honesty. You're right. I promise. No more secrets. We went to bed that night with the tension between us seemingly resolved, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. David's explanation made sense, but there had been something in his eyes when I'd confronted him, something that looked almost like panic. The next morning, I called Linda again, determined to reconnect with my best friend before the wedding. Linda, it's me. I know you've been busy, but I really need to see you. Can we please have lunch today? Margaret, I told you I'd check my schedule. Linda, we're getting married in less than 2 weeks. You're my maid of honor. I need my best friend right now. There was a long silence, then a sigh. Okay, meet me at the garden spot at noon. When I arrived at the cafe, Linda was already there, sitting at our usual table. But something was different about her. She looked tired, almost haggard, and she was fidgeting with her napkin in a way that screamed nervousness. You look exhausted, I said as I sat down. Are you feeling all right? I'm fine, just busy with work, but Linda had been retired from her job at the library for 3 years. What work could she possibly be busy with? Linda, what's going on? You've been acting strange for weeks, and now you're lying to me about work. You're retired, remember? Linda's face flushed red. I meant busy with volunteer work. At the hospital. Since when do you volunteer at the hospital? Since recently. Look, Margaret, can we just order lunch? I don't have a lot of time. We ordered our usual salads, but the conversation felt stilted and uncomfortable. Linda kept checking her phone and glancing at the door as if she was expecting someone or afraid someone might walk in. Are you meeting someone else after this? I asked. No, why would you think that? You keep looking at the door and checking. Your phone. I'm just distracted. Sorry. I leaned forward, studying my friend's face. Linda, we've been friends for 30 years. I know when something's bothering you. What is it? For a moment, I thought she might tell me. Her eyes filled with tears, and she opened her mouth as if to speak. Then she seemed to catch herself. Nothing's bothering me. I'm just tired. Is it the wedding? Are you having second thoughts about being my maid of honor? No, of course not. Margaret, I want you to be happy. I want this wedding to be everything you've dreamed of. But there was something in her voice, something that sounded almost like guilt. I hugged her tightly, overwhelmed by her generosity and love. Thank you. This means more to me than you'll ever know. As we walked back to our cars, I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. I had found love again with a wonderful man. My daughter was happy and successful, and I had a best friend who loved me like family. What more could I possibly ask for? I'll call you tomorrow, Linda said as we reached our cars. We still need to finalize the seating chart and confirm the flowers. Sounds perfect. And Linda, thank you for today. For everything. I couldn't do this without you. She smiled and gave me one more hug. That's what best friends are for. As I drove home that evening, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I felt a contentment I hadn't experienced in years. In 3 weeks, I would walk down the aisle in my beautiful champagne dress, wearing Linda's grandmother's pearls, to marry the man I loved. Everything was falling into place perfectly. If only I had known that in just 2 weeks, my perfect world would come crashing down in the most devastating way possible. But that's a story for tomorrow. What will Margaret discover about the people she trusts most? Click on the next video to find out. Leave your comments below, hit that like button, and subscribe for more incredible stories of resilience and redemption. Welcome to our series, She Helped Me Pick the Dress. I'm so glad you're here with us today. If you've ever trusted someone completely, only to have that trust shattered in the most painful way possible, this story will speak to your heart. Please hit that like button and subscribe to follow Margaret's incredible journey of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately redemption. My name is Margaret, and at 58 years old, I thought I had learned all of life's hardest lessons. I was wrong. Sometimes the most devastating betrayals come from those we trust most, and sometimes they lead us to discover strengths we never knew we had. It was a crisp October morning when my best friend Linda and I walked into Eternal Elegance, the most prestigious bridal boutique in our small town of Millbrook. At 58, I never imagined I'd be shopping for a wedding dress again. My first marriage had ended 23 years ago, and I'd raised my daughter Emma as a single mother, pouring all my love and energy into giving her the best life possible. Margaret, darling, Linda said, her voice bubbling with excitement as she squeezed my arm, I still can't believe you're getting married, and to such a wonderful man like David. David Richardson. Even thinking his name made my heart flutter, like a schoolgirl's. We'd met at the community center where I volunteered, teaching literacy classes to adults. He was there visiting his elderly mother, who lived in the assisted living section. Our eyes met across the lobby, and something just clicked. At our age, we both knew that finding love again was precious and rare. David was 62, a retired high school principal with kind eyes and gentle hands. He'd been widowed for 8 years, and like me, had given up on the idea of romance. But there we were, two people who thought their time for love had passed, planning a wedding. I can't believe it either, I confessed to Linda as we approached the reception desk. Sometimes I wake up thinking it's all a dream. Linda had been my closest friend for over 30 years. We'd met when our daughters were in kindergarten together, and we'd weathered every storm life threw at us side by side. She'd held my hand through my divorce, celebrated Emma's graduation with me, and been my rock when my mother passed away 5 years ago. If anyone deserved to share in my happiness, it was Linda. The boutique was everything I'd imagined and more. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over rows of exquisite gowns, each one more beautiful than the last. The walls were lined with mirrors that seemed to stretch endlessly, and soft classical music played in the background. "Good morning, ladies," greeted a sophisticated woman in her 40s, dressed impeccably in a navy blue suit. "I'm Victoria, and I'll be helping you today. Are we shopping for the bride?" I felt my cheeks warm. "Yes, that would be me." "How wonderful. And when is the big day?" "November 15th, I replied. "Just 3 weeks away." Victoria's eyes widened slightly. "Oh my, that is soon. But don't worry, we'll find you something absolutely perfect. Tell me, what's your vision for your special day?" I glanced at Linda, who nodded encouragingly. "Well, it's going to be a small ceremony. Just close family and friends. David and I, we're not young anymore, so we wanted something intimate and meaningful." "That sounds lovely," Victoria said warmly. "And what style are you drawn to? Traditional? Modern? Vintage?" "I honestly don't know," I admitted. "I got married the first time when I was 22, and that was so long ago. Fashion has changed so much." Linda stepped forward. "That's why I'm here. Margaret has always been too modest about how beautiful she is. We need something that shows off her elegant figure and makes her feel like the radiant bride she is." For the next 2 hours, Victoria brought out dress after dress. There were flowing A-lines, sophisticated sheaths, and even a few ball gowns that made me feel like Cinderella. Each time I emerged from the fitting room, Linda would gasp and offer her opinion. "Oh, that's lovely, but maybe something with sleeves? The color is perfect, but the cut isn't quite right. Beautiful, but perhaps something a little more formal." I trusted Linda's judgment completely. She had always had impeccable taste, and she knew me better than anyone. When I'd gotten divorced all those years ago, she'd helped me redecorate my entire house. When Emma graduated from college, Linda had helped me pick out the perfect outfit for the ceremony. She had an eye for these things that I simply didn't possess. Then Victoria brought out the one. It was an elegant champagne-colored dress with 3/4 sleeves and a modest V-neck. The fabric was silk crepe that flowed beautifully, and there was delicate beading around the waist that caught the light perfectly. The moment I put it on, I knew. "Oh my goodness," Linda breathed when I stepped out of the fitting room. "Margaret, you look absolutely stunning." I turned to look at myself in the three-way mirror, and for a moment, I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. The dress transformed me. I looked elegant, sophisticated, and yes, beautiful. For the first time in years, I felt truly beautiful. "This is it," I whispered, tears forming in my eyes. "This is my dress," Victoria beamed. "You look radiant, Margaret. This dress was made for you." Linda came up behind me and placed her hands on my shoulders. "David is going to fall in love with you all over again when he sees you in this." The dress was more expensive than I'd planned to spend, but looking at myself in that mirror, I knew it was worth every penny. This was my second chance at love, my second chance at happiness, and I deserved to feel beautiful on my wedding day. "We'll take it," I said firmly. As Victoria began taking measurements for alterations, Linda and I chatted about the other wedding preparations. The ceremony would be held at the historic Millbrook Inn, a charming bed and breakfast with beautiful gardens. We'd booked the small chapel on the property, which could seat about 40 people comfortably. "Have you decided on flowers yet?" Linda asked. David and I were thinking white roses and baby's breath, something classic and timeless. "Perfect choice. And the cake?" "We're keeping it simple. A 2-tier vanilla cake with buttercream frosting from Sullivan's Bakery." Linda nodded approvingly. "Everything sounds wonderful. You know, Margaret, I have to say, I'm so proud of you." "Proud of me? For what?" "For taking this leap. For believing in love again. After everything you went through with Richard, I wasn't sure you'd ever trust someone enough to remarry. My first husband, Richard, had been a charming man who turned out to be a serial cheater. The divorce had been messy and painful, and it had taken me years to rebuild my confidence and trust in men. David was nothing like Richard. He was honest, faithful, and genuinely kind. Still, getting engaged at 58 had felt like a huge risk. David makes it easy, I said softly. He's nothing like Richard. He's patient and understanding, and he loves me exactly as I am. That's how it should be, Linda said, squeezing my hand. You deserve all the happiness in the world. As we left the boutique that afternoon, dress ordered and alterations scheduled, I felt a sense of excitement I hadn't experienced in decades. In just 3 weeks, I would be Mrs. David Richardson. I would have a partner again, someone to share. My life with, someone to grow old with. Linda and I stopped for lunch at our favorite cafe, a cozy little place called The Garden Spot, where we'd been meeting for coffee and conversation for years. The owner, Mrs. Chen, knew us both by name and always saved our favorite table by the window. The usual ladies? She asked with a warm smile. Actually, I said, feeling bold, I think we should celebrate. Could we see your dessert menu? Linda raised an eyebrow. Margaret Thompson, celebrating with dessert in the middle of the day? Who are you and what have you done with my practical friend? I laughed. I'm getting married in 3 weeks. If that's not worth celebrating, what is? We ordered chocolate cake and coffee and spent the next hour talking about everything and nothing. Linda told me about her son's new job in Seattle and